Video game plots versus film plots. So we did a video similar to this, which was, why do video game movies always suck?
Which they do.
But today, as requested by you guys, we want to look at the games that do plots very well. How do they compare to a movie? And do they compare to a movie? So right off the bat, what are some games that do plot very well?
Well, Resident Evil. Those are pretty good plot.
Especially the most recent one.
Yeah, that was a pretty intricate, and I mean, even the suspense was just phenomenal. And they didn't do it with a bunch of jump scares like they easily could have done.
So, another one I can think of, the early Assassin's Creed had very interesting plots.
It was phenomenal. It definitely went off the rail, but the original, probably first two, maybe
I'd say
three were great.
First two.
Three would be adequate.
Three would be adequate, yeah. I'd say Grand Theft Auto. Oh, if you like that satirical, like, funny take on Western society.
It's amusing, but as much as I enjoyed playing Grand Theft Auto, I mean, I still do. I still play it. I'll still buy it. It's a good game. It always left me wanting just to be able to play a game that is exactly like that, but doesn't have the ability to beat someone to death with a dildo. It would be cool to play a game like that was a little bit more real.
Yeah, so the realism factor, because it's supposed to be very ridiculous. And then The Witcher, which I haven't completed, but The Witcher has, from what I can tell so far, has a phenomenal storyline. Like, every little side quest is its own story. So...
and I would even say you could go so far as saying something like Battlefield 1.
With the soldier stories going through their own take on war.
Which you have to give them credit. It's a completely different take than what we've seen in anything else. And I thought, in a short story perspective, very impressive.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, and I overlooked that because it is a pretty brief campaign, but the missions you do play, it does a good job of, like, painting the history. Like the Italian campaign, we learn all about his daughter going through as, like, a heavy machine gunner. That was very interesting.
And it kind of takes the same approach. There's a new on Netflix. You can see it. It's from the BBC. Documentary / it's kind of shot. Each individual episode is a story from a battle in World War I called Our War, and it does it in a way where they show, using actors, what happened, but then briefly in between scenes they'll cut to, like, a brief fact, or they'll shoot a map overlay over the screen that lets you see, like, alright, you just watched them shooting at this point, going through this struggle, but this is where the soldiers were, this is where they were coming from. They didn't realize that there was fucking 70,000 dudes right behind where they were shooting. And it's a new take of a documentary, and it's really intriguing because it sucks you in.
It is kind of formatted like that, now that you kind of make that comparison. That's very interesting. And in my opinion, it's better than Call of Duty because it's very isolated and realistic in its depiction.
Oh yeah, because Call of Duty, I mean, they base it, it's like a lot of games where it starts off with a very real premise and then just gets way out of fucking hand at the end.
Yeah. So, first question on this topic. Can a video game story be better than a good movie?
No way.
No way. Why do you say that so definitively?
Because a story is defined. Every detail is meticulously worked over if done right.
Right.
Whereas a game, don't get me wrong, they have some great stories, but it's a hollow shell because half the story is the gameplay.
True.
Which is great, but it's not... you could not... I mean, people watch people play video games all the time, but it's not like watching a movie. You don't get that same immersement unless you're physically playing, and then it's not so much a story because you're making your own decisions.
Yeah, so I think, and I was going to bring that up, I think the decision-making the player makes, because that's a really big hallmark, especially with story-driven games. Mass Effect is huge on that. When you get to a crucial plot element, you make a choice, and it affects what happens in the story. The Witcher's like that, Assassin's Creed a little bit, Grand Theft Auto a little bit. You make your choice and it changes the story, but unfortunately what happens is a lot of times when these choices are set up, they feel forced, and they're not really very natural in the storyline.
Not to mention, like, building off that, a lot of those questions that they make you, or a lot of those choices, don't ever really add up in anything. a lot of times they'll channel you right back into the same
Yeah,
spot.
unfortunately that's true too. And what happens with that is, again, it cheapens the story, because if your choices are just going to bring you back somewhere, what was the point?
And that's the thing, is I get it. You know what? You get a game that's on a game disc or it's saved on a hard drive. There's only so much that they can put into this. I get that. But it does take away from the story, because nothing pisses me off more than when I play it one way, I get a result I don't like, so I play it the other way, and it goes to the same result. And I'm like, well, great, now I just wasted an extra 2 hours of my life. Fuck that.
Yeah. So, I mean, some games do have incredibly engaging stories, but I think you're right. When you have to always consider gameplay, and you have to consider the player, and you can build a very cool world, and you can put a lot of details in the world. Grand Theft Auto is very well known for that, and Assassin's Creed is good at that for historical accuracy with real buildings and, putting all these little characters in with their interactions, and it does a great job of immersing you. But when you're really talking about a narrative, when you're trying to talk about a story, you can't beat a film. You can't beat it, because a film only has one thing to focus on: narrative. A game has all these other aspects, like how you fight, where the player will go, what's in the world, where does the world end, all these choices, and you lose something there.
Like, when you look at it in perspective, some of the best storylines in games that could potentially be movies, they don't make games like that anymore. I mean, if you're going to look, and one of these is kind of a pull for people who are more into specific games, I mean, like, the best storylines you're looking at over the past 30 years. Zelda.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy, the original ones, when they were poor graphics, it was turn-based battle styles, and a cult classic, which these games were made for like $20 a piece, and now sell for over $150 if it's still sealed. Suikoden. Those are some of the best storylines.
I would like to add Age of Mythology. That game had a great story. A great story. It was parallel with history, but it added fictional elements to make it interesting for the player. And I think what happens with those old games is, again, less to focus on.
Because that was a real-time strategy and the clips are so small, you forget about it. But no, it really was a pretty good story. I mean, you'd sit there after school, because, I mean, back then, and you'd blitz through that shit for like 5-6 hours just because you'd spend 4 hours building troops and fighting just so you could see the next clip and understand where this is going.
Yeah, so I think that game did a good job of, but you could get the story without any of the gameplay, quite honestly. You could just have all the cutscenes right next to each other and get what's going on. But it's very cool, and it just made the game so much more enjoyable. But again, if you made that a movie, it would be a totally different experience. So, moving on, you guys asked us why can't they translate to movies. We kind of already covered that in a video we've done before. Our conclusion was essentially miniseries is more logical because they're so grand in scope and there's so many things to cover. Break it up into episodes. Make it a miniseries. But which stories? So can you think of a movie universe that might be able to deliver its story very well in a video game format? Because we have seen a lot of games go into video games. Or a lot of movies, rather, go into video games.
I mean, like Star Wars was an easy one.
Yeah.
I mean, just the universe, you don't even have to follow any fucking story. The universe itself is just so intriguing. Lord of the Rings has already been done.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, it's hard to think about it. I mean, because all the movies that really would be great have already been done.
Here's my big example that I have. There is a game that came out for GameCube, PlayStation 2, I believe, called Enter the Matrix. Enter the Matrix was a game that a lot of the same actors and writers participated in, and what it did is it took place during the events of the main trilogy, but it added to the events. So none of the main characters are playable. You play as Niobe and Ghost, who are a smaller ship, and they're doing missions that were going on at the same time as the things that Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity were doing. And that added to the experience and added to the building of the world. And the things in that game were official canon. That is where a video game plot can really shine.
Easily, especially now that they've successfully created Rogue One. you could spin the shit out of Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's looking like Battlefront 2 is going in that direction.
Oh, God. I can't. I really can't handle another Battlefront. That was such a waste of money.
So
I still kick myself. $60 for 4 maps of competitive gameplay.
The second one looks pretty fun, but
Yeah,
again,
the first one looks fun too.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I spent $60.
Well, Battlefield 1 at least was good, right?
Oh, Battlefield 1, fucking phenomenal.
Okay,
I'd love to see that turned into a miniseries.
Yeah, but you kind of... all right, without going too far into a thing there. So really, I think the answer, if a video game is going to exist in a pre-existing universe, like Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, Star Wars, I think the best way to do it is to follow the Enter the Matrix strategy, where you supplement the story. You don't recreate the story everyone already knows, because you're just going to deliver it poorly, where they could just watch the movie. Deliver something that will supplement the universe.
I could agree with that. I mean, I can't think of a movie off the top of my head, but there would be definitely, I mean, like James Bond video games, they don't make them like they don't make them at all anymore.
No, not really.
But I mean, that was always fun because, I mean, it's a surface level story that it's not too deep to begin with, so you can alter it in the game without having any real problems.
GoldenEye, good example of that. They literally followed the movie, but every step of the movie was like way more bigger and a longer process.
And it gives you that opportunity, you know, like a movie like 007, you're going to get immersed into it, you think it's so cool, and you get to just act it out.
Yeah. But that's an action movie, so you get a lot of benefit for a video game for that. You do. So, what do you guys think about what universes could use supplemental video games to add to their plots?
Tell us what movies you think would make good games or vice versa, and we'll tell you you're dumb. Just kidding. We'll be more than happy to talk about it with you. That's what we do.
That's a weird outro. Subscribe. Just got a little too intimate.
Subscribe now to Bird's Eye View Media.
I like that. I might use that. Okay.
Well, I would hope so. Why else did you make me do it?